2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brandon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
I'm miserably safe in my marriage. Help.
Welcome to the Real Talk Recovery Podcast with the Therapy Brothers.
We're brothers, we're therapists, and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Good. This is a good topic today, Brandon. I think we're seeing a lot of this just in what we're dealing with in the day to day. So this will be a fun one to try to discuss today.
Yeah, no question. So, how you been, Tyler?
Been great, man. Great weekend. This last weekend, my daughter Maddie came back from college, so I got to see her, and she spent some time with the family. And got her wisdom teeth out, so that's always fun.
Yes.
It's always fun when you can record your kids when they're still on the anesthesia. It's pretty entertaining.
So when I got my wisdom teeth out, I don't know if you remember. I think you were on your mission. I think you were gone, but I swelled up huge. Like, I think I had some impacted, and Mom flew down to her sister's that night, and in Dallas. So. And she calls and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I put your pain meds in my purse." She felt so bad. Yeah, and I was so just swollen, and anyways.
Yeah.
I'm fine now, but
thank goodness years later.
And didn't you just get a wisdom tooth removed or something?
Yeah, so I had my wisdom teeth taken out. I actually had a really weird experience with my wisdom teeth where I actually think I might have been like sexually assaulted. But
that's a story for another time.
That's a whole other story. But yeah, so I had
leave the audience curious.
I had my wisdom teeth taken out when I was like 18, 17 years old, but apparently they missed ones because just like 2 months ago, my dentist was like, "Hey, you got this wisdom tooth that's going to start pushing all your teeth around. We need to go in and take that thing out." And I said, "Oh, all right." So I went as a grown adult and got one of them taken out. So
that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's the year of wisdom teeth for us because Lexi, my other daughter, just had hers done a couple months ago. So anyway,
there's some parallels to recovery there. You know, having a wisdom tooth down in there wreaking havoc and pushing everything around. You know, you got to step into the pain, face that it's there, and go root that thing out, or else it's going to continue to cause some problems.
I love that you tried to segue that back into our subject today, because I think there is actually some truth to that. But
Yes.
I don't know how we were going to bring that in, but I'm glad you did.
Well, all right, Tyler, let's go to the topic at hand. I I tell people this. I say there's different types of relationships. There's relationships that that end in healthy divorce. So the couple navigates that. They remain friends. They work together with the custody and the kids, and everything goes well, right? That's one relationship. Another relationship, and I think this is the worst case scenario, is when it ends in bad divorce. The couple hates each other, and they don't navigate parenting very well, right? So that happens. Then there's this like unhealthy stay together marriage where it's like we're scared of divorce, so we stay together and we don't change anything. We stay unhealthy, but we stay unhealthy in our relationship. Okay. And then there's actual healthy relationships, right? Where it's I'm happy. I feel intimacy. I love being in this relationship.
We know how to
It's
communicate
awesome.
with each other. We can manage conflict okay. We're committed. We know we're both still all the way in on this thing, and we want it to be good.
Right. So there's this like continuum, right? And to me, miserable divorce is hell, is horrible. But also miserable marriage is hell and horrible, right? And from what I see, so many people fall into that category of I'm really not satisfied in my marriage. I'm not happy. Things aren't okay, but I've learned how to survive in this relationship. I've learned how to make it through and avoid divorce, but this is not what I want. And I know so many people, so many of my clients, friends, people who live that way day in and day out in their marriage.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brandon. I think if you were to kind of like rank those things in terms of what you wouldn't want in terms of outcome, it would be miserable divorce at the bottom. And then the next level would be the one we're talking about here, which is, what did we call it? A comfortable, miserable marriage, meaning we're not going anywhere, but we're also not likely to get better. And
so what you're saying, Tyler, is that would be worse, and I believe it'd be worse for the children and for the individuals in the marriage than a healthy divorce.
Yeah, well, statistically speaking, it actually shows that if you had to take your pick between those, that a healthy divorce is better than either of the other two options we just mentioned for the children. The best option for the children is for people to actually work through their stuff and figure out how to save their marriage.
Right.
And that's the best outcome for most people too, if there's a way to make that happen. But it takes two for that.
So Tyler, why do you think it is that people stay stuck in in this hell, in this, maybe hell's a little strong, but in this comfortable misery of marriage? Why do people stay stuck there? Why don't they make changes in order to be happy?
That's a good question, Brandon. I think there's so many layers to this that we're probably going to miss some of it when we talk about it. We'll try to outline some things today. I think the first thing is that when I look at like why people stay together, you could look at it from an attachment perspective, and there's fear in the loss of whatever attachment I already have, even if it's not a very healthy attachment. So the fear of what it might mean to be alone is scary. The fear of what it might mean to be divorced and what it says about me in terms of failure is scary. The fear about my spiritual beliefs, a lot of people we work with are highly religious, and there's a lot of belief around divorce and about marriage and about needing to stick it out and make it work, which I actually agree with. But that's fear too of, then I can't make certain choices. There's another layer to this, which I believe is right down at the root, is that I don't believe in myself enough. I don't know who I am enough. I'm not in touch with my own values enough to have the courage to stand up and protect those values in a relationship. And so it becomes easier to sort of kick it along down the road and pass it along to, well, I'm just sticking this out because I'm doing it for my religious beliefs, or I'm doing it for the kids, or I'm doing it for, almost like playing the martyr, instead of instead of having to do what it takes to actually facilitate change, hopefully in the upward direction towards a good marriage. And then the last thing, Brandon, is that if I have to do those things to facilitate change, then I also am taking the risk that I could move things off of this comfortable spot that I'm in. So I might not actually end up with what I really want. If I really want a really nice, good, supportive, interdependent relationship, the mode to get there is going to include discomfort and risk. That when I set boundaries that I haven't set before, when I start stepping into places that I need to in order to invite a new relationship, my partner might choose other things.
So could I say, Tyler, I like where you're going with this, and I want to keep going down this road, but could I say that if I don't love myself and if I'm not healthy, then I'll be able to stay in and tolerate an unhealthy relationship much better, right? And so, my unhealthiness actually preserves the relationship.
Yeah, Brandon, I actually think that this is something that, I don't know, you can speak to this a little bit too, but in my work with my clients, I frequently run into situations where it's almost more hell to gain more education, because you start to get these ideas in your head of, oh, I need to actually be my own person, and I need to actually like set my own boundaries, and I need to actually be transparent and honest. So they're getting that from their therapist or their group or whatever, but every time they go back and then they test the waters on these new principles in their old relationship, it's like slammed down, or it causes drama, or there's like, it doesn't feel comfortable. And so now they're stuck between this rock and a hard spot where they kind of know rationally there's got to be a new way, but emotionally it's so scary to put those things into practice because it could shift everything. And so, yeah, some people will subconsciously not get better in order to stay in a bad relationship.
It's interesting what we're talking about. I've kind of gotten obsessive over this Ukraine thing with Russia. Like I like history, and I like so I've been watching it really closely. And I was watching this one news segment where they were interviewing Russians in Russia, and they had pictures and some videos of what was happening in Ukraine, and they were trying to show these Russian citizens what was happening in Ukraine, and it was really fascinating. What the response was is many of them would just turn their head, like literally turn their head and say, "No, I'm not looking at that. I'm not going to pay attention. I'm not going to look at that. That's fake. That's not real. I'm not looking at that. I don't want to talk about that." And it's this dilemma of reality. It's safer for me to not look at the reality here, and it's better for me to not look at the reality than to deal with it. Because if I have to look at that, then there's repercussions, and there's repercussions that I don't know if I can handle, and I don't know if I want to take on. So this is just classic denial, right? And how does this relate to what we're talking about? It's the same thing. Is if I really get honest with myself about my marriage, I really get honest with myself about where we're at as a couple and where I'm at in my own individual recovery, and that is too hard. That's too scary. And so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to act like everything's fine to my kids, to my church leaders. I'm going to eat it away. I'm going to look at porn. I'm going to play video games. I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to
become a workaholic.
Just try to, workaholic. I'm going to numb away this pain and avoid this because I got to be in denial about that, even though the pain is very real.
Yes.
Right.
And then Brandon, when you get stuck in that cycle, what are the fruits of that cycle? Like what does it lead to personally and relationally if that's where you find yourself?
Well, it's interesting. What I said earlier is your unhealthiness actually supports staying in an unhealthy relationship. And so if I'm in a lot of pain, resentment, there's a lot of void in my life of things that I know deep down I need. And so I go and I numb them out. And let's say I eat a bunch of food or look at a bunch of porn or whatever. How do I feel about myself? I feel worse about myself. So why am I worthy of love? I'm not. I don't feel worthy of love. So my spouse can treat me as bad as they want to, and I'll take that on and I'll think, well, I'm not getting out of this relationship because no one will love me as I am because I'm trapped in this cycle.
Right. So shame ends up feeding more shame, which ends up leading to more stuckness in the relationship. And if you get two partners who are both in that same cycle, it's like you got this figure eight of shame going on where we bump up against each other just enough to know that we still really wish we could make it work, but we can't figure out how to be truly real or authentic or vulnerable. So then we dip back into our other places of escape and shame, and we just kind of cycle up and just.
The relationship becomes a source of shame and rejection, not a source of self-discovery and intimacy. But even if it's a source of shame and rejection, the relationship still preserves itself in that way, which is very twisted and very
it's
unhealthy.
A way of it's almost a counterfeit way of trying to preserve connection by way of avoiding rejection, and yet it never actually yields real connection. And so it's just this weird no man's land to be in. And I think another fruit that comes from that pattern, and this is one that I see a lot, is it seeds resentment. And resentment sometimes towards self, but a lot of times towards my partner, because now I can be justified in being mad at them because they're not meeting the needs that I want or like the expectations that I've had, even though I've never asked for them because I'm putting on a front. And eventually this turns into this long-term undertone of resentment. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson, and he talks about this in his newest book. He talks about a couple who has this underlying resentment for 40 years of their marriage, and you can tell that it's there when, let's say, he is lying in his deathbed and his wife comes to him and he can't move, and she comes to clip his fingernails, and she just happens to cut just close enough to the quick to make him bleed, but she's doing service for him. Right. but she's still just taking the tax, taking the penance just to say, hey, I'm paying you back for all the things that didn't happen inside of our marriage over these years, even though I'm here to care for you. And that's where I think couples go in these long-term plays where they figure out how to stay comfortable, but don't actually learn how to battle for the reason we get into relationships in the first place, which is deep connection.
Well, yeah. And so I'd really like to talk about how you get out of this, but before we do, I do want to take it a step further. It leads to this resentment that you're talking about. But then it leads to contempt, and it leads to hatred, like some really nasty energies, some of the worst that are out there. And a person who's not a hateful person can turn into a hateful person when they feel like their relationship and their partner is such a source of shame for them, or hopelessness, or just stuckness. And it's interesting because they're still locked in, like, look, we can't get divorced, but we hate each other. That to me is hell on earth. That to me is horrible. And the funny thing is they justify and they say, well, but I'm still in this for the kids. So the kids go home from school and they go to this home that's full of hatred. How good is that for the children, right? So there's other reasons, Tyler. There's other just financial security reasons. I don't want to split up the finances. I don't know if I can make it on my own. Or we have a certain lifestyle that we've been living. So like so there's those reasons as well. On top of some of the other stuff you mentioned, like some religious reasons to stay, some cultural reasons to stay. there's all those things. I don't think the answer to get out of this type of a relationship is always divorce.
I agree with you, Brandon. I think
right?
in most cases, everyone's a little bit different, but in most cases, the best option is not divorce. But the best option is also not to stay where you're at. The best option is the work and drive and desire for something new with the risk that it could end in divorce.
Yes. And the best option is for both partners to come to the table and say, here's my like mess, and I'm willing to show up as a different partner now and step into the pain and the hard work that it's going to take in order to not have the outcomes that we're getting anymore in our relationship. I want to do that work, and I hope that you do that work as well. I hope so, but I'm going to move forward and do that work. And I think, Tyler, what we see is if one partner really does that work and one partner doesn't, a lot of times that ends in divorce.
Yes.
Usually it does. If neither partners do that work, they can stay miserably married. If both partners do that work, they can actually go from a miserable marriage to a happy, healthy relationship.
Brandon, so this is, you said something that I want to make sure we emphasize here as we step into this place of what do you do then if you find yourself in a marriage like this? And the first step, I think, is to do exactly what you just said, where you go to your partner, and you didn't say go to your partner and tell them everything they need to change. You go to your partner and you own your stuff and say, here's where I'm at. Here's how I'm feeling. Here's how I've been treating the situation and treating our relationship. And here's what I'm going to do about it. Everything that you just said, Brandon, the first principle here is full accountability.
But Tyler, this goes very counter to what this person has been doing for years and years. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm a person who struggles with sexual anorexia, intimacy anorexia, right? Meaning that I intentionally keep my partner at bay. I don't want to get rejected, so I don't want to get intimate. So I control that, right? And so it leads to this kind of cycle that we've been talking about, a miserable marriage. So for me to go to my partner, I could go to her and I could say, well, if you weren't so angry at me, and if you couldn't, if you could get over some things, then we'd be happy. I could do that. That's a waste of time. But for me to go to her and say, I struggle with my intimacy, and I'm going to work on me, and I'm going to look at the reasons why I do. I've struggled to be really honest with you and boundaried in our relationship. And I've held a ton of resentment, and I've chose to do that. I'm going to work on that. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life holding that resentment toward you. And I'm going to figure myself out so that I can be strong enough to be a person that can be intimate, to get rejected, to be vulnerable. I'm going to figure that out. And I hope that on the other side, you can meet me there. Right. But whether you do or not, now you wouldn't say this, right? But whether you do or not, I'm going to go do that, right? So when I say it's counter to what you've been, a person with intimacy anorexia or sexual anorexia, how likely are they, Tyler, to go get that vulnerable with
it's a vulnerability problem to begin with, right?
Right. So they're stuck because they don't want to go do that.
But that is the pathway through. That's the pathway to personal freedom, and it's the invitation to relational freedom. Which actually sounds like it does sound backwards, because when you look at relationships, especially traditionally, it's like, well, that other person's going to complete me and make all my needs better, and I'll be a whole person. And what we're now sitting here saying is no, the answer is for two people to come to the table and say, here's my bag of mess, and here's what I'm going to do about it. And I'm hoping that as I do that work, that you'll be on the other side with me, and that we can do this together, in the long term. And that's hard. And Brandon, as we're bringing this principle up, it's easy to look at that from one side. Let's say in, the world we live in, we're talking about betrayal trauma, or we're talking about compulsive acting out, whatever it is. For the person who's compulsively acted out or got an addiction or something, it should seem a little easier to be the person to come back to the table in the relationship and say, hey, I messed this thing up. Like, I need to go to work on some things. I need to fix my behaviors, whatever. What I don't see happen a lot of the time is that what I see instead is shame, and they come back and they're like, yeah, I deserve to have any type of punishment or criticism I get for the rest of my life because I've ruined everything and it's all my fault. And really what they have to do is they have to let go of the shame, and they have to come back with accountability and say, nope, I have messed things up. I've made a big mess of things, and this is what I have control over to move forward with. I've got to fight to actually learn to love myself, and then I've got to figure out how to fight for my relationship. On the flip side of that, Brandon, here's the hard one: is what's it like to go to the partner who's been betrayed and to say to them, yeah, you kind of got to own your stuff. Like, explain that a little bit.
But, well, you don't go as
no, I'm saying you as a therapist.
Say, you need to own your stuff, right? Well, it depends on where they're at in the process, right? But it is absolutely essential. Like, if they want to stay stuck in resentment and then playing the victim forever, then they're going to continue to be miserable, right? Rather, the alternative to that is come to the table and say, look, you broke my trust, you broke my heart, that was painful, and I love myself enough to let you know that I need to be in a relationship with a trustworthy human. And so if I see you working toward that, I can hang in for a little while. And if I don't, then I got to move on with my life, because that's not a compatible relationship with me, right? And so that's somebody stepping into their power, into their strength. I want to back up a little bit, Tyler. You're talking about how the person struggling with addiction oftentimes shows up in weakness to try to create, to try to fix it, to try to create safety. And we talk about this conundrum quite a bit, where okay, I won't be honest with you. I won't have boundaries with you. I won't tell you who I am or show you who I really am, because I don't want to hurt you again, right? And here's the conundrum: is that person who's been acting out behind the scenes and full of resentment, what they need to do is actually show up in strength in order to rebuild trust in the relationship. And so, but showing up in that honesty, and this is the conundrum right here. The partner might hate that. They might reject it. They might have a hard time with it. Yeah. So, and I'll give you an example here in a minute. It doesn't seem fair, but deep down, their femininity and their attachment, their natural attachment, is going to like the strength that's coming out. So let me give you an example. If I'm miserable in my marriage, and I'm miserable, but you know what, I've acted out and I continue to act out, and I've betrayed my spouse. And so my spouse, let's say, has a lot of contempt and just treats me like dirt all the time. Just silent treatments, passive aggressiveness, those type of things. Okay. And if I go to her and I say, I'm getting all the stuff that we just said, right? I'm gonna do my own work. But also, I need to let you know that when you lob insults my way, I'm not going to stay in a conversation with you. I can't. And so when you're calling me names and saying insults to me, I will not stay in that conversation. And if that's met with, now that might, who knows how this made up person will respond, but if that's met with,
you did this, you need to be the one who shows empathy. You need to be the one who stays here and listens, and you need to hold space for me, all that stuff.
Right. How dare you say that I can't say certain things to you with what you did to me, right? So, okay. So there's her pain, there's her frustration and her anger. You can still stay strong in your boundary. And now you can revert back to the old miserable relationship, which is like, yeah, I am a piece of garbage. Yeah, you're right. I'm horrible. Okay, that's reverting back and preserving the unhealthy relationship. Or you can step in again and you can say, man, I can tell that you're mad at me. And you have a right to be mad at me. And I'm not down with you insulting me. So if you're going to insult me, I'm not going to stay in the conversation. Because I want to have healthy communication between the two of us, right? So can you see this?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
this struggle, Tyler?
I think that is the challenge, Brandon. Is that even with what you're saying, that can be that new boundary in the relationship can be brought across in an unhealthy way or a healthy way. That new boundary can be brought across in kind of like sounding like, oh, you're the one who's now hurting me and I'm a victim now, so I'm not going to like listen and talk to you anymore. So until you can be an adult, then we won't talk about things, right? Or it could come across, like you said, from a place of strength, which is, hey, I see your pain. I actually want to lean in, but I also want something new. And I'm going to have to be in this scenario, which it could be different each time, but I'm going to have to be the one to take a time out on this one because the road that we're now currently on does not lead to new. It leads to old.
But Tyler, but Tyler, I think healthy communication skills are very important here, right? But I guess what I want to say is how it comes across to the partner is less important than where the heart is of the person who's trying to communicate. So like I could say it perfectly. I could say it kindly and perfectly. But what I need to do is step into my honesty and trust myself in that confident way, right? So when I do that, my partner might feel completely insulted.
Sure.
Even if I do it in a very kind way. Or they might be completely appreciative that I'm doing it that way, one way or the other, right? The important thing is that I consistently do that over and over again. And as I do, my partner has a chance to actually know the real me in who I actually am. And I'm a person that can build some foundation, some trust in that relationship.
Makes sense, Brandon. I'm thinking of like, all the life lessons we learned as kids. I remember, you remember all the times that we'd get in like fights or whatever, and we'd end up sitting across each other on the couches and we weren't allowed to move until we'd come up with a solution, That was one
of the best parenting tactics mom and dad had.
Great when they'd set us
I use that
straight
one
across from
kids.
each other, and they'd be like, "All right, as soon as you guys can work it out, then you can both get off the couch," knowing that both of us didn't want to stay there. So it'd take like 30 seconds or a minute, and then I think it ended up with like, "Hey, I won't do this if you don't do that," and like, "Good deal." They're like, "Mom, we're done." She's like, "Okay, go ahead, like do your thing." But mom used to come in and she used to say something because it would always turn into this like, but he did this, or but he did that, like, but Rex did this, or but Brandon did that. And like, and what would mom say? She'd say, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Right. And in a certain sense, like that's a hard thing to hear when you're the one who's been on the receiving end of a lot of terrible things. But the truth is that when you look at things from the bigger, broader perspective, that it's absolutely true that 2 wrongs don't make a right. So I have to take ownership, even if I'm the one who's been hurt, for my choices, for my behaviors, for my reactions, if I want what I'm saying I actually want.
But Tyler, it's interesting what you're saying, because in the way that mom said that, basically it was, if Tyler hurt you, it doesn't justify you hurting him back, right? But I think what needs to be understood is, if I hurt you, it doesn't justify you hurting me back. So that's important to understand. So if I hurt you, Tyler, yes, I betrayed you. That hurts. That's painful. Inside of me, it's important for me to understand it's okay for me to say no abuse, no, hurting me, insulting me back. I can actually stand up for myself. Do you see what I'm saying? So 2 wrongs don't make a right. means it on the
let me
side,
take a stab at it, Brandon. What I think you're saying is that if you're the one who's hurt me, and I come back to you and now I'm frustrated, I don't feel like justice has been served. Maybe I come back and I tell you you're a piece of trash or something, and I call you a name, but then I tell you we need to talk forever, even though I'm just going to tee off on you and how disgusting you are. That it's on me to, number one, not do that because I'm not helping things go right and I need to see the bigger picture, but it's also on you to not allow that pattern to continue, because at the end of the day, you'll feel worse about yourself. I'll feel worse about myself. In a certain sense, what you're saying, Brandon, is you're not loving me by allowing me to follow through on calling you names, and you're actually showing weakness.
Yes.
Because what you're now doing is being complicit in the old cycle that is now going to fuel more fear, more disconnection, more shame. And you'd be better off, even though in the immediate run, you're going to take more heat, you'd be better off saying, I love you enough and I love me enough and I want us to work enough to not do this right now. Like this doesn't work for us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. That's well put, Tyler. Yeah. We're going to run out of time, but I want to kind of give some specific steps about how to get out of a miserably safe marriage. Real quick story. My daughter, she's going to be 9 next week. She got a sliver on the bottom of her foot, and it was a pretty good one. She starts screaming, just, she's our very dramatic one. She starts screaming so I get the tweezers out, and you could imagine what happened when I brought the tweezers out. She looked at and so she's moving her foot. She's like, no, you're not, and I'm like, just hold still. My wife's up there by her head, like comforting her. And, I barely get close to her foot. She screams again. But yeah, every time she took a step down, she could feel that sliver in her foot. And, it's the same analogy we've been talking about, is in order for her to get better and not have that constant nagging pain in the bottom of her foot, what needs to happen?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, she basically is going to need to confront the tweezers, confront the pain of having the sliver pulled out, so that in the long term, she can walk with freedom and less pain.
Yep. She's going to have to calm down some and get real with herself that that's in the bottom of her foot, and know that the only way is for me to come in and to help her get that out. Right. So this is the same as a couple in this state. Every time they take a step down, they feel that sliver, right?
This is
you guys
both
need
sides.
to calm down, and you need to get curious. And this is both sides. You need to get curious and confront the reality that the sliver is there. Confront the reality that you're in this type of a relationship. Okay. The next thing to do is to fiercely self-reflect, to ask yourself, how have I played my part to get us in this space? Okay. The next thing that I would recommend, after you've fiercely self-reflected, you're aware of your part in doing this, I would really recommend get help. Get an outsider's perspective, a really good therapist who can help you navigate out of this. But go into that therapy with a very open, humble heart, and try extremely hard to stay out of war with your heart, with your partner, as you go through this process. So that therapist can notice every little tiny way that you're falling right back into that miserable marriage. Like, oh, do you see what you're lacking boundaries here? Or did you see how you communicated in that way? Or what's underneath all of this in you showing up so weak here, right? Or notice all this resentment that's just over here that we can't get anywhere because it's just there. So all these little things going on, systems going on, get an outsider's perspective, a non-biased outsider's perspective, and go do it with some humility. And then after that, practice. Your old patterns are ingrained and automatic. They just happen over and over and over again, and you'll unconsciously fall right back into them. So you're going to have to practice new patterns in a conscious way, and it's going to be difficult at first and uncomfortable, so that you can get different outcomes in your relationship. And as you do that, you're going to start to see some fruits that you can't even imagine, that have been gone for so long out of your life, that it's like, oh my goodness, love and trust and empathy and intimacy is so good. It's the best parts of life. And you're going to realize that work, digging that sliver out, that pain
That's
of
beautiful,
that
Brandon.
was so worth it.
And I think that the last element of practice, like giving permission for it to be a work in progress, can be really, really powerful. I know that you and probably some of our listeners get sick of the same old stories, but as you're talking, I'm just thinking about part of my own journey here, and I want to illustrate the points you just make really from the perspective of part of my wife's side of things. So when things really fell apart, it was brutal. It led to all the same things that we talk about all the time: fear, doubt, shame, lots of anger, lots of resentment. And I was the one who had really caused all the damage. And I remember one day, my wife was really, really struggling, because I had kind of come to my senses after D-Day, and I had kind of gone all in on wanting to get better and trying to be better, and still having a ton of shame and wrestling with it, but really having a broken heart and ready to change. And it felt unfair to my wife, because everything got dumped on her plate, and she saw me as the perpetrator and the villain, and she was wrestling with that, and her heart was hurting, and she was in a lot of pain, and it was like coming out in lots of ways, and she was really struggling. One day she was driving home, and she heard a talk on the radio about the Good Samaritan story, and for some reason this particular day she heard it in a different way, where she saw herself as one of the passers-by, and she saw me as the guy who'd been beat up on the side of the road, which was a totally different perspective than what she had been hearing. I had been the villain, and now all of a sudden I was this person who was broken, and she was being invited into a space where she could be part of the solution. And I remember she walked into the house when she got home, and she walked straight up to me, and she looked me straight in the face, and she said, "Tyler, everything that you've done is not okay with me. I'm in a ton of pain, and I see you as a good person, and I want things to work." And that was like a massive turning point in our relationship, where all of a sudden she was saying, "I am hurting, but I see you in a different way, and I want to go to work on this stuff." And part of the work was then continued boundaries. Every time there was a little, dip in trust or honesty, there was boundaries there. She didn't put up with the same old crap that I used to do, but she did it from a place of wanting to help things go right, rather than just being angry and bitter and frustrated. And she had to confront the fact that she had a heart that was eating her alive, that even though I caused the damage, I couldn't fix. And she had to take ownership for that, and she had to figure out a way to shift her energy and to be able to release that for herself. And because of that, it opened space inside of our relationship to do that practice that you were talking about.
Well, I think to highlight probably the most important part here is something happened where she had some compassion for you. And I think it's extremely hard when you're in a relationship where you have a lot of resentment, you feel like your partner is crazy, difficult, overly sensitive, mean, all these things, to stop trying to fix it all, but to actually take a step back and say, I can see their pain.
Yes.
I'm going to see their pain, and then I'm going to do my own work. And so I'm not going to villainize them.
Which also doesn't mean letting them off the hook.
Accountability
it means
for me.
I'm taking accountability for my choices, right?
Well, that's taking accountability for me. Yeah. Like I'm going to be, And so my heart is going to be at peace with their pain and where they're at and why they're acting the way they do. yet I'm going to be healthy and strong enough to be honest in that relationship. And that's the beautiful space, I think, in a relationship where people come to the table in that space of grace and forgiveness toward their partner, but strength and honesty and love for themselves. And when those things come together,
absolutely.
that's where
and it works,
where it really works
magnificently and beautifully, right? when it's done properly, and when both partners see it the same way and go to work on those things.
Yep. All right, you guys. So if you're stuck and you're miserably safe and comfortable in your marriage, then you shouldn't have listened to this whole episode, because now you know too much. And step over that threshold of pain. Have the courage to move forward and move out of this. Life's too short not to love. Life's too short not to have intimacy.
Know that the pathway through is accountability, grace, forgiveness, and boundaries. So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, you guys. Please rate and review us.